All right, so we continue on with a history walk, you might say, walk down memory lane with Bodyboard International Magazine. If you missed it, part one was about my life with Maury Boogie. It'll keep it over there on Facebook Live, and you can watch it. I think it went maybe 10, 20 minutes. And this one, we're going to talk about the years of 1991 to 1996. And the way it all started is historically, because that's what we're doing here today, is I had gone off, and like I said, at the end of the Maury Boogie days with a band, and then I ended up working at a graphics company. And they taught me in those days, it was nothing like today, where you, do graphics on discs and stuff like that. You hand laid everything out. And I learned how to, what's called strip, where you strip the text right into a line and this type of thing. And so I got a little bit of training. And so that was 89 through 91 that I worked there. And in 1991, Western publications decided that it was a recession, it was bad, and they decided to stop publishing Bodyboarder magazine. Well, that hurt a lot of people, because the mag was what some of the kids that were now professional writers, they were being sponsored, and they had to get their picture on a cover or in the magazine on an article or whatever, and there was nothing. I remember the devastation. And a couple people, Jay and Regina Minetti and Pat Caldwell, and a couple of people called and said, well, you know graphics, why don't you start a publication? And I thought about it, and hi, those of you, Roger, we were talking about you in the history one. I didn't see your name on the last one, but we were talking about you, so go watch it. You won the first pro event, remember that? You got that little thing in your hat you can carry for the rest of your life. Anyway, so we come up to No Magazine, 1991. It's a recession. Now, I'm going to make a confession. I had no idea. Remember, I was Little Miss. Tom taught me a little bit about sales, but I didn't know a whole lot about business in those days. And I'm going to be honest with you. I didn't know what a recession was. I had no idea what that was. Okay, so now think about it. Western publications had just folded because of the recession. They couldn't get people to advertise because nobody had any money. And then people said, well, you need to do a magazine. They had no clue what it means to do a magazine. No clue. Well, first of all, you got to have money, and I was working at a graphics company, and it's like, come on. So I said, well, let me think about it. And so I decided that I would call up all the people that were paying $4,000 for an ad at Bodyboarding magazine and ask them, if I gave you a full-page ad in the first one, 1991, if I gave you a full-page ad, this is Maury Boogie, okay, will you do it for $1,000 a page? Okay. So I collected about, I want to say 30,000, but it might have been around 15, because I remember it was a lot of money. But the deal was you had to give me the money to go print it, because the printer wanted the money before they would give you the magazines. You see how it works? And so I had to have the money. Well, who has $30,000 sitting around their back pocket? So I went and collected all the money from all these little ads and said, give me the money and you'll have a magazine. Well, the bodyboarders were stoked. I mean, they were totally stoked. So we now have a magazine. So I called, let's look at the masthead here. The masthead was the people that were the people that worked. Okay, so we had, if you have this first one, you'll see that the publisher was George Abu Hamid. He was the owner of Wave Rebel. He was very instrumental in giving me the money for the back page. See, that was Wave Rebel. That was how that got done. I mean, this was cash. You know, we had to, you know, all these people that their businesses are folding right now in this pandemic. Cash really is a good thing, okay, when you're trying to start a business. So he helped out. So we have editorial director Pat Caldwell. See, Pat was right. This was his heyday. He needed, you know, he needed covers. And when I show you some of these magazines, he made it to some of the covers. And he didn't make it because we said, Pat Caldwell, I'll tell you how he got on the cover. We had a little committee that picked the cover shots. And I'll tell you about that in a minute. Let's see. Editorial production, Carlotta Chadwell. Okay. Senior editors, Debbie Caldwell, Jordan Finkelstein, and Jay Reel. Jay Reel was one of the editors of the first BIM. And I don't know if you know a lot of these. Are writers, a lot of writers. Linda Marks was a writer. John Marks was a writer. Kisazaki was in France at the time. He gave us some French articles. And photographers, let's see if you remember any of these people. Todd Anderson, Tom Boyle, Hank, you know, K. Ray Halgren, Russell Hoover, remember him? He was considered one of the best. I was so excited to get Russell Hoover photos and Hank in my first little issue. And Scott Weiner. And so here we launched the first one. And, you know, when you look at it, it was pretty rudimentary. BZ had the centerfold, you know, and Pat helped me with getting some of the stories. Tom Boyle, who's someone you've probably heard of in the boogie world, is a great photographer, did some photos of Jackie Booter. Do you remember him? Jackie Booter. I wish I could put these up on the screen, but we're just going to go random through some of the magazines. Jackie Booter was probably considered one of the best drop knee writers, and had to compete with prone writers too, by the way. We had Ask the Manufacturer. J.P. Patterson did a great article on the manufacturer there. Well, it's there. You don't. Tom DiDoquino did an article on Going Pro. I hope Tom listens to this later because I still see him popping up on things. And thank you all for joining me here. Hi, Chris. Here was Wave Rebels team. Look at this. Okay, so we have. Okay, see if you can name these people. This was 1991 Wave Rebels team. Okay, so we've got Pat Caldwell, of course. There's Chris Burkhart, who is also known as Burks, right? That's Jack Lindholm, Jackie Booter, and who did I miss? Kainoa McGee. I mean, these guys are all still legendary. I mean, is that crazy? So that's 1991. That's 91. What is that? In 20. That's 20 and 9. That's 29 years ago. And you still hear these names in the sport. Is that not crazy? That is so awesome. Now, I always wanted to have people would take these little clippings of their events to their sponsors. So we always had a results page. Okay. That was part of the first issue. I insisted on having a results page and with pictures. Look at Brian Press right there. The one we didn't know if that was a girl or a guy. We made fun of him on that one. He had his long hair up in a ponytail. The other thing was I insisted on every magazine have the girls. Chris, you'll be happy about that. Almost every issue had a story about the girls. And not girls in bikinis sitting on the beach, but girls ripping. That was another one of the things I wanted. I insisted on. We had people of the sport. That was Mary Barsvani, and some of you might remember her. She was one of the top promoters with me and Maury Boogie, and then she went on to work with Mary Lee Christensen. Yeah, so this was the first issue, but I wanted to show you something that was in every issue that was one of the most popular features. And it came from an idea that of mine. Oh, Tony Prince and Joe Evans will be stoked to see this. This was the article on the other solar eclipse. They went up, 2 bodyboarders went up to do the solar eclipse, or went down, I should say. They went over to where was it? This was not the one that was just recent, but here, how's this sound? The recent one that was a couple years ago, they both went to see that solar eclipse, I believe up in Idaho. But they had done this original one with the boogie boards. Oh, it was at, they went and saw it down in Mexico somewhere. But anyway, isn't that amazing? Tony got captured it. Tony was still just an incredible photographer back then. But I want to show you a couple things that were in every issue. Was did I put it not on the first one? Okay, the results had to be in every issue. Girls had to be in every issue. A people story had to be in every issue. And what's happening. And everyone would call me and go, well, who's going to be in what's happening this month? You know, or this issue. Because we always wanted to find out what's happening with so-and-so. It was like such a cool, and this, look how rudimentary this first one was. Just a picture sitting there with some text. It was rough. First issue was rough, but we got it to the masses in a record 8 weeks. So nothing was lost between losing Bodyboard magazine and then coming out with BIM. So Maury Boogie at the time now was owned by Whammo or somebody, you know, bought the first inside spread. And I was so happy that I was able to sell that. Well, I called her up and I said, so what do you think of the mag? Now remember, this was up against Bodyboarding magazine. And it was only like, maybe 30 pages compared to like 60. So I was proud of it. I really was. But she says, well, you know, it's a little rough, but I'm sure it's going to get better. And she had a very good attitude about it. So I went, okay, it's going to get better. So we took this one. And it was just, if you look at the pictures on the cover, we didn't want to feature anybody, but we wanted everybody to be on it. And there was Kainoa, that's Mike in the middle there, and the Wave Rebel team. And, you know, we just wanted a kind of a collage of a bunch of different people on the first one. So I am so excited that I have one copy of the first one, you know, and it was like, yeah. Now we go into the second one. We're starting to think we're kind of like, you know, we think we're doing good, you know. I don't know how to explain that, but look at the Bodyboarder International now. So I was told by the distributor that you got to have what it is up big, like, you know, gardening or whatever it is on the newsstand, because that one I had such a little font. You know, I mean, look at the difference. You know, look at the difference of those fonts, how that red and white pop out. That was all from getting on the newsstands. The second one made it to the newsstands. And that was what the distributor said. You have to have it pop off the newsstands. So we put Jackie Booter, looks like Kainoa, and Jay Reel on the second issue, the holiday issue. And that's all three of them there, green and red for the holiday issue. A little rudimentary, but, you know, we were just learning about how to do a magazine. And Maury Boogie came back and ran the center again. BZ ran a big ad. So now we're going, okay, we got a magazine. We're doing good, you know. And the masthead still was the same. We have Pat Caldwell helping me with the editorial, and Brian Bielman now comes into the second one. Do you know who Brian Bielman is? I mean, just an amazing photographer. He found out that Hank was submitting photos, and one of the things that I did different Because I heard some of the magazines, surfing magazines, would take a photo for the cover and then hold that photographer out for about 3 months before they paid him. So I said, okay, if I'm going to get good covers, I'm going to need to pay $300 for the shot. I'll never forget this. And I'm going to pay them right up front before it even goes to the print, so I could keep getting all these good shots. Pretty smart, huh? So we always had some really good cover shots, I think, anyway. So Brian Billman came on board. Hank's still there. Chris Diebald, do you remember him as a surf photographer? He came on board, second issue, 1991. And John Kepler was really good. Michael Paz, I don't know if any of you remember him as a photographer. Scott Weiner, great photographer. And Woody Woodruff. Yeah, we had some good photographers. And we were the Bodyboarding magazine at all, remember. In those days, there was no other magazine. So I was really excited. But one of the things that we incorporated in the second issue that was in every issue after that, which was a couple things. The shaping table, which was all about shaping boards. And we also had one that I like to feature drop knee, because drop knee didn't get a whole lot of exposure. So I would always put a lot of drop knee riders in there. And I'll tell you, when we get into the BIA on the next part of the series, I'll tell you what happened with the drop knee riders and me. But anyway, this was the most popular section of all sections of the magazine. And I've lost the chat room here. Let me see. Oh, yeah, the All-Star. Yeah, I'm going to do that. KIA, question answer, was so little back then. I don't know what that means, KIA. That was pretty awesome. There was enough of the bikini model. Oh, yes, I'm okay. These are the conversations. It's not showing the chat room as I'm talking. Yeah. These are legendary. These were legendary photographers. We were stoked to get them. But remember, it was all about the money, because I knew if I was going to get good photographers, I had to pay, because these poor guys were left out for months sometimes from these magazines. So that's why that was one thing I insisted on. But this was the 2 pages, sometimes one, in every issue that was the most popular. And see if you were ever in it. The postcards. And what it was, my theory was, if a person got their picture in the magazine, they would go back to school and say, I'm in the magazine. And they did. And everyone would ask me every time, who's in postcards? Well, you got to send them in. All right. So there's even Brian Press sent one in. Okay. Yeah. Rider Justin Wessling just going, prone at a little wave, probably in Carlsbad there, But these weren't the greatest shots, but some of them were pretty good. But it was just someone that wanted to be in the magazine. And I felt like this is what we have to do. We have to feature, everybody. Remember, this was a bodyboarding magazine made by bodyboarders, okay? And so that, and this little, I remember this little sketch came in postcards, and the little kid writes, please write back. That little cartoon there. That was so cute. Yeah, that was one of the most popular sections. Sometimes people went right to postcards just to see if they were in the, they were in it. And here's a calendar we put on the center spread, and the second one, Pat Caldwell. Beautiful shot. Let's see who shot that. Scott Weiner. He did a lot of shots of a lot of people. That was the centerfold. So that was number 2. Again, I always had all the contests. Now there's a lot of contests, but these people were getting paid for this. The contest section. They would go and take that back to their sponsors and say, hey, look, I won and I was in the mag. Remember, for those of you that aren't don't remember these days, this was the only place you could go to get, sponsorship money. Yeah, now they just post their pictures on Instagram. Back in the early 90s, I used to pick up Bodyboard magazine at the local supermarket here in DE. Miss it. BIM was a special time before the internet and social media. Absolutely. Read this magazine front to back when they got them. Yep. Here's Pat's cutie. Oh my gosh, she is still putting it in the rail. I know. So this was number 2, and now we kind of felt like, we got some really good writers. We had health tips, the Maury Boogie National Championships, and just you could see there was just really it was a special time in the sport. It really was. So as we move along, I know that Jordan wants to show the BIA All-Stars. But here are all the, remember I just found these today. I went and looked and searched. These are all the rag mags. They're all, they're called Hardcore Bodyboarder. And I published them for people that didn't compete. The ones that really needed pictures, but they didn't compete. And they were free. And you'd find a stack of them at the surf shop. And we tried to get some good shots. And I don't think I paid as much for a cover. I can't remember. I think a photographer would get like $100 for a cover on this one. But it was, they were popular. And then we started inserting them in BIM in the middle. So it was like pretty cool. Back then, to get sponsored, we used to have a nice resume, pictures, and we had to hire people with the big lenses like Tyler Moriarty. I know. Yep. It was a different day. Okay, so I'm going to go through a stack here, and we'll just open it up to any questions. I know Jordan said something about the BIA, but here's first year. Always a real, good photography, and also we made sure that the centerfold was really good. That's Danny Kim standing up. He was known at the time as a stand-up writer. Probably well known for that. If you talk to anybody in the history of the sport, they'll remember Danny Kim was could rock. We had cartoons. It was the heart of bodyboarding, you might say. There was always there was always what's happening with, and there was always a postcards. See, all the people that sent in, they were in black and white, and they were usually just a photo that they mailed to me, and that was in every single issue. And believe it or not, probably the most popular magazine that we did. And I'd love to just read some of these articles today. Look at that, Barbados. Wow. Yeah, I gotta get in here and read some of these. Chris Burkhart, this one was kind of a fascinating shot because his hair was kind of going, you remember he had long hair on the top, and his hair was kind of going in a different direction than. Then we went out to Schlitterbahn. My first trip to Texas and a wave park was at Schlitterbahn. Some of you have heard about it. It's a wave park out there right in the middle of Texas. And that's Pat Caldwell writing it. And of course he had to make the cover. I mean, look at that shot. Where do you get a tube like that with a tree in the background? And as you can see, now we're going by BIM. Remember, like what I said, when people know, like they would go, when is the latest BIM coming out? Tom, we talked about you in the first part of the history. I forget what we talked about, but I hope your ears were itching. So there was a whole article on Brian Beelman, who is just the most amazing photographer. There's a story on him. Graphics were starting to get a little bit smoother, and we were still doing layouts. It wasn't on a disc yet, but we did a whole article on shore break. you know, shore breaks, and it was just a fun. If you're a bodyboarder, you know, it was just a fun magazine, and you know, what's happening with Ivan Okuda? Do you guys remember him? Ivan Okuda. We always did a what's happening with somebody that people wanted to know more about. So let me tell you a little bit about how these cover shots got picked. Every month at the BIM office in Oceanside, California, Pat Caldwell, Jay Reel, Regina Minetti, Kirk Blackburn, George G. Marino, Debbie Caldwell, and myself would get together and put the carousel down with all the slides. Okay, some of you youngsters probably don't even know what a slide looks like, but these were slides, and we would put them on the light board and check them out through a loop, what was called a loop, and we would look at it, and if it looked like it was worthy of the magazine, we would put it in the slide. So by the time everybody got there, Pat Caldwell, Jay, and everybody, we would have the carousel full, and when they would get here, we would start, you know, going through the carousel and picking the photos for the cover. And that is how the cover got picked. And if you were Jay Reel or Pat Caldwell and your shot was worthy of a cover, it didn't matter because it was not political or anything like that. Your photo was worthy of a cover. And I think when we went to Schlitterbahn and did that event, the whole issues about Schlitterbahn, Pat Caldwell was worthy of a cover, you know, even though he was on the editorial. This particular writer, a local Huntington Beach guy, Robbie Crawford, ripped, won the BIM meeting that night of a cover shot. You know, so now we're looking at all cover shots that were picked by the crew. Here's Ben Severson, picked by the crew. And this particular one, we're starting to get a little bit thicker, a few more advertisers, and industry news, and where can I buy a bodyboard, something about the shops. Oh, we did a thing on where can I, Turbo, remember Turbo in Hawaii? Whoops, right there. And postcards once again in every issue, and people sent it in, and they're all usually in black and white, and people would go there and look for their pictures. New York, West Side Big Island, Irvine, California, and Puerto Escondido. See, they came from all over the place. It's cool, totally cool. What were the means championship in the 70s? What were the means championships? What does means mean? Were everyone's first exposure to Jacob Reeves, Phil Hardware, they later became the stars of some of the best bodyboard videos ever made, like Revolution. Yes. Okay, we're going to get into that here in a minute. We're moving up into that. Not to mention Jacob inventing the ARF. Jacob Reed was amazing. Yes, he was. Okay, I don't know, Alexandro, what were the means championship in the 70s? Maybe you could explain what that means. Okay. Hi, Bob. All right, so we're moving down the line in the history of the sport now we're going via BIM Magazine, hoping that some of these names will show up. And on the cover was, let's see. Let me just see here. Usually we would put, okay, Tony Boyd Tarpley, 23-year-old first-year pro from Wahiawa, Hawaii, loving the beauty of this west side Oahu wave. All right, so we wanted to do something a little bit different. And here's what we did. We put a wave, a rider with a helmet on, something a little bit different than anyone was used to. And that was something that was picked by the crew, the BIM crew, we used to call them. How to do a wipeout, been at work. Let's see if there's anything else. You know, postcards, same issue. I want to get down to the All-Star one that Jordan wants to talk about, because this is when everything started really hitting. Jackie Booter was one of the early '90s stars. I don't know if you've heard his name. He ripped on Drop Knee. He really did, and he started getting winning some events even in the prone division. Who were the main championships in the '70s? What were the main championships? You know what? I just did the '70s podcast. I mean, I just did the video, the one before this, and I mentioned that in there, but we're in the '90s now. But if you want to go watch that other one, there are some mentions of that. Okay, so postcards once again. We've got Huntington Beach, Virginia Beach, Puerto Rico, Aliso, California. I love showing those because that was what really kept the magazine going. Believe it or not, I know you think you bought it because you wanted to see Jackie Booter or Pat Caldwell, but it was that postcards and this. I mean, you're getting a little magazine 101 here. Was the contest page? Look at that. We had to squeeze those. We had to squeeze those in. Oh, don't be sorry. I mean, I'm trying to get through the '90s now, but we did talk about the '70s earlier. So now we're getting into like some of these '90s people, and we're going to go. I'm going to show you Pipeline, and again at this point now. Bodyboard International magazine has become BIM. Everyone was calling it BIM. Probably one of the thickest issues was this one with, I'm drawing a blank on that writer on the cover. Robbie Gall, really another really impressive drop knee writer in the day. And a lot of these guys were giving Kainoa, a run for their money. Jordan, some here, but try to get out when Jackie Booter was awesome. First board Wave Rebel. That's right. And then Team Madrid. Do you remember the Madrids? George D. Marino was the national champion and NSSA champion. Of course, the BIA now. This is a year 4, so we're now into '94, and we are well into the BIA. And my next video will be on the BIA. But I do want to show you some of the BIA All-Stars in this video. But I started posting all the BIA championships. Now, BIA was Bodyboarder International Association, and BIM was Bodyboarder International Magazine. So do you think there was a connection? Yes, there was. And can anyone figure out why there was a connection? Well, it's because now a couple other magazines have hit the scene. I want to see if I can remember them. Pitt and maybe Riptide. And I was putting on the BIA. So if I'm putting on the BIA, wouldn't I want my magazine to be BIM being given out as gifts and stuff like that, or prizes or free at the event? Yes. So BIM and BIA were kind of like, they say in Spanish, juntos. We were together. BIM published all the BIA anything. All right, so now we go back to the Wave Park, and this whole issue is on Wave Parks. And Vista opened up a Wave Park. I don't know if any of you remember that. and they were riding out there, and we were doing events out there, Flow Rider. And look who ends up on the cover. Jay Reel, Drop Knee at Schlitterbahn. Have you ever ridden Schlitterbahn? Do you know about Schlitterbahn? Oh my gosh, I have so many stories about Schlitterbahn because I was putting those events on. I tried to jump on that wave. I tried to jump on that wave that Jay was on right there. And the owner saw me getting ready to, hop on, and like Chris Tenberg and all these people are just riding it. And he came down, he runs down, he goes, I don't think that's a good idea that you get on that wave. And I go, why? And he goes, well, it's pretty gnarly. But we're having this private party tonight, and we'll crank it back down a little bit, and I'll let you ride it tonight at the private party. I went, oh, okay, I'll do it then. So anyway, I go to the private party, and all the pros were there. And Eppo, if those of you know Eppo from Australia, was there. And I'll never forget this as long as I live. He said, Patty, I would not suggest you jumping on that wave right there, but why don't you get on my back, and I'll ride that other wave to show you what it feels like, and then you can kind of get, okay. So he gets in the water, I jump in the water, I clump onto him, we take off on this wave, and I'm not exaggerating. This thing's going on, turning all over the place. Next thing I know, it spits us out. It throws us into this little thing that's like circular, like a toilet, and you come out. And that was my ride at the Schlitterbahn. I'll never forget Eppo for that. He was such a wonderful human being to let this old lady experience the Schlitterbahn. But now we're at, now everybody, we are turning like the little HCV, the rag part, the little newsprint part, now got turned into a whole section on the BIA. And all the people that were making money from their sponsors could now clip away. You got pictures, you got your sponsors all, showing up and all over your wetsuits and your boards and stuff. And so the BIA now is in the mag a lot, because BIM, remember, BIA, BIM. And here's postcards. People are still sending in postcards. For those that have been with me this whole time, yeah, we're still doing postcards. Okay, and I'm getting there, Jordan, on the All Stars. Let's see. Oh man. Oh, here we go. Okay, so now we decided. If you notice that we went, the magazine went from this BIM, real big BIM logo up on the top. No word of Bodyboard International Magazine, except it wrapped around, wrapped around the whole thing. And now this is like kind of like when you've kind of arrived, and we hadn't arrived, but we were really, remember, the only magazine kind of out there for a while. Was now we went to a global BIM International, and that was the stickers look like that, the t-shirts look like that, the hoodies look like that. Everything had that global little grid with BIM in it, and that was where we ended up. All right, Brian Weiss featured in this magazine, this issue. Do you guys remember him? Whole article on Brian Weiss. Really unbelievable writer. All right, so this was my idea. Don't know if it was a good one, but it was my idea. And I wanted, at this point of the, what would you say? At this point of the sport, remember, I was in it since 75-ish, 76-ish. And now we're looking at 90. We've been in it 20 years now. And we were starting to get some ambassadors, that were kind of like, for example, Jay came out as one of the spokesmen for, the sport, and Pat Caldwell, a lot of spokespeople. But I thought if there were people that are going to walk on this earth and tell the gospel of bodyboarding, had to show up as good writers, good students, good speakers, a good ambassador, good. Didn't have to be excellent, but just good. You know, good at a whole bunch of different things. And we were going to start an all-star team that had little cards like baseball cards. And the all-stars were going to move through the bodyboarding world as ambassadors. And they were called the BIA All-Stars. But you couldn't just be one. You had to win some stuff. You know, you had to be part of, you know, the whole competition thing and all that. So here we have it. And I will just kind of like put it up there, and you can, I'll start with this side. I wish these were up on my back screen there, but like I said, this was kind of impromptu. All right, so there you go. There's Jacob Reeve in the middle there. Mike Lee, who we still talk about. Jen Miskoff. Let me turn this around and see some of the names you might recognize out of this. But like I said, these were all ambassadors, and they got a lot of accolades from their sponsors. There's nothing like that in the sport today. Nothing like this. Nothing did the job that the All-Stars did. You know, we had Phil Harmsberger, who was up and coming with Jacob Reeve. Brian Peterson, do you remember him out of the Santa Barbara area? Eric Eliason, also out of Santa Barbara area. John McKinney, Heath Cochran, I don't know if you remember him, he was a DJ. Nathan Statler, Mike Lee, Joe Miskoff, Mike Jordan, Robbie Fabry, J.R. Seinold, Regina Minetti, Justin Hill, and Brian Barker, and Jill Stubbs. And we had captains of each area. So Jill Stubbs was the captain of the North Santa Barbara area. Heath Cochran was Heath Coltrane, I'm sorry, Heath, Huntington Beach captain, and Brian Barker was the Cardiff South, captain. So we're going to go into that when we talk about the BIA and the difference between the BIA and the events that are run today. There was some things that were done a little bit different that made it one of the most popular events of all time, and why people wanted it to come back. And it can come back if there is a resurgence of bodyboarding. Okay, so there you have it. A little history of BIM, Bodyboarder International Magazine, the HCB Hardcore Bodyboarder, and the BIA All-Stars. And I'm going to do another video here on just the BIA. So you can tune in. That would be part 3. But does anyone want to call in? Do you have any questions about this era? The 1991 to 96-ish era? Do you have any questions that I might be able to answer? Or do you want me to look up anybody in one of the mags? Or do you have just something that's kind of brewing that you'd like to know? You're welcome to call. 760-231-1235. I couldn't get anyone to call on the history. I don't know, you guys are like, I thought you were more, when Scotty Carter called in the last time, him and I ended up doing an hour and 15-minute podcast. It was crazy. Just remember this and remember that, and we were just like talking about everything. But what I like to do for those of the young people coming up in the world of bodyboarding, I would love to do a BIA podcast now. And Mike Lee rules. He just as funny as heck. Good friend. Glad I met him at the BIAs a long time ago. Yes, he is. Johnny, that massive Tahiti he surfed, who was he with Jordan? That massive Tahiti he surfed, who was he with? Okay, Jordan probably can answer that one. what was this? I remember when BW did his first pro contest in IB Bud Tour, did really good, but got Stuart a little irritated. I remember that one. I remember that event, yeah. Brian Weiss, BW, as he's also called, he could do that. Yeah, I remember that too. Yeah, you don't want to, you know, and Brian didn't care, you know. But anyway, so I'm going to, because I don't want these to be too long, but that's a little bit about Bodyboard International Magazine. Oh, and then let me just tell you the end. When it ended, again, if you remember my 5-year, I talked about in the first part about the history. The second part ended in 5 years too. I am what's called a multi-potentialite, and we have, it's not a bad thing, it's just kind of a character type, but we have a 5-year attention span. So I'll go along and do all these things. Then in 5 years, I kind of get bored, want to do something else. So that's what happened with Maury Boogie and me, which you'd think, who would quit a job like that? And that's what happened with BIM. So the 5th anniversary, my last issue, 5 years, of course, my good friend, Guillermo Tamega, had to be on the cover, but it was still picked, because you look at that wave, and I don't know why I picked those colors. I don't think it was probably my best cover, but it was definitely a good wave. And at that point, Guillermo was, look at this, he was 2-time world champion. And he went on to be 6-time world champion. And one of the most delightful people in the sport that I know, and will treasure his friendship forever. So, all right, so I will leave you there with a little bit of Bodyboard International Magazine, unless you have any questions. And I'm going to start up a podcast on the BIA. So if you're interested in how the BIA was different in the sports, I'm going to give you some of my personal feelings on competing. So if you can't watch it now, be sure and tune in or just watch it later. Okay, so thanks you all for joining me, and I'm going to start another video and cover just the BIA.